Hashtag brace yourself. A human warship is incoming. The pale blue moons of Iridia Prime cast long shadows across the ancient stone structures dotting the landscape. The Whispering Stones, as the locals called them, stood like silent sentinels, their smooth, dark surfaces occasionally pulsing with a faint energy that most Kailosians had long since learned to ignore. Most, but not all. Alara stood before the largest of the stones in the central plaza of Calstia, the capital city. Her slender fingers hovered just above the surface, not quite touching. The stone's energy signature seemed stronger tonight, almost as if responding to her presence. Or perhaps it was merely responding to the anxiety that had gripped the entire planet for the past several cycles. "You won't find answers in that relic, historian," came a voice from behind her. Alara didn't need to turn to recognize Council Member Thalen's dismissive tone. "With respect, these relics are the most sophisticated technology ever found on Viridia Prime," she replied, still facing the stone. "And they predate our settlement here by thousands of years. Ancient curiosities, nothing more." Thalen moved to stand beside her, his ceremonial robes catching the moonlight. "The Council has more pressing concerns than your obsession with forgotten history." Now Alara did turn, fixing her amber eyes on the older Kailosian. "Like the unidentified vessels at the edge of our system? Explorers or traders, most likely. There's no cause for alarm. Their formation suggests otherwise. The patterns match historical accounts of the Vlach hunting fleets described in the archives I've been translating. If I could just complete my research on the Terran Protectorate mentions." Thalen sighed heavily, cutting her off. "Alara, your dedication to your work is admirable, but these Terran protectors you keep mentioning are likely nothing more than myths. Stories our ancestors created to comfort themselves in a vast, unknowable universe. Then explain why similar references appear in the historical records of 12 different systems, all with connections to these stone structures." The council member's patience was clearly wearing thin. "The council meeting starts soon. I suggest you focus your energies on practical matters." He gestured vaguely toward the government complex before walking away. Alara watched him go, frustration burning in her chest. 3 years of research, thousands of translated texts, and still, the council refused to listen. The Whispering Stones were more than monuments. They were technology, protection, perhaps even communication devices. And the scattered references to the Terran Protectorate and an ancient emergency beacon protocol couldn't be coincidence. Her communicator chimed softly. A message from her research assistant. Asterisk, another vessel has joined the formation. Council emergency session moved up. Your presence requested. Asterisk. Alara cast one last glance at the stone before hurrying toward the government complex. The once peaceful evenings of Calstia now carried an unmistakable tension, as if the very air was holding its breath. The central chamber of the Kailosian Council was designed for contemplative discourse, a circular room with tiered seating surrounding a central speaking floor. Today, however, the space hummed with nervous energy as council members spoke in hurried whispers. Chief Science Coordinator Mira was projecting orbital tracking data onto the main display. "As you can see," Mira was saying as Alara slipped into her designated observer's seat, "the vessels have formed a precise geometric pattern at the edge of our system. They're maintaining position, not approaching further. We've attempted communication on all standard frequencies. No response." "What about their energy signatures?" asked Elder Valuz, the most senior council member. Myra's expression tightened. "Unlike anything in our database. Their propulsion systems alone outclass our entire defense fleet by several magnitudes. Have we detected any weapons systems?" This from Security Director Lozen. "Difficult to determine at this distance, but their hull composition suggests significant defensive capabilities." Alara couldn't remain silent any longer. She stood, drawing the attention of the chamber. "If I may, elders, the positioning of these vessels matches historical descriptions of Vlach hunting formations. They're a predatory species that dominated the western spiral arm approximately 2,000 years ago. And you've determined this from your stone tablets and ancient scrolls. Phelan's voice dripped with skepticism. From historical records preserved in the archives beneath the northern stone, Ilera corrected. The same archives that reference the Terran Protectorate, a powerful alliance that supposedly deterred the Vlach from this region. Elder Valus raised a hand for silence. Whether these visitors are these, Black or not, what would you suggest? Historian? Activate the stones, Ilera said without hesitation. My research suggests they're part of an ancient defense network, possibly even a communication system that could contact the Terrans if they still exist. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Preposterous, Phelan declared. We barely understand how those structures work. They could be dangerous. More dangerous than what's orbiting our system? Ilera challenged. Security Director Lozen stepped forward. While I don't share Historian Ilera's certainty about these ancient allies, I do recommend raising our defensive readiness. We should at least power up our orbital shield grid. Elder Valus nodded thoughtfully. A reasonable precaution. Make it so, Director. As for activating the stones, his gaze fell on Ilera. Continue your research, Historian. But we need more concrete evidence before taking such a step. Ilera opened her mouth to protest, but was interrupted by a sudden commotion as an aide rushed into the chamber, breathless. Elders, the vessels, they're moving. They've entered the system and are accelerating toward Viridia Prime. The central display updated, showing the elegant, predatory ships breaking formation and spreading out in a classic envelopment pattern. Orbital defense grid to maximum, ordered Lozen. Alert all ships to defensive positions. But Ilera knew it wouldn't be enough. Not against the Vlach, if that's who these visitors were. She slipped out of the chamber, her mind racing. If the Council wouldn't activate the stones, perhaps she could find another way to trigger the emergency beacon protocol hidden within them. She needed access to the Central Stone's control chamber, and she needed it now. The silence was deafening. One by one, Viridia's orbital relay stations had gone dark. The elegant, predatory ships moved with precision, disabling the planet's communication infrastructure before most Kylosians even realized what was happening. Ilera raced through the underground archives, grabbing essential data crystals and stuffing them into her satchel. Above her, chaos reigned in the city as news of the blockade spread. The limited defensive fleet of the Kylosians had engaged the unknown vessels and been systematically neutralized without a single Kylosian ship destroyed. The invaders didn't want destruction. They wanted submission. Her communication device crackled to life, one of the few still functioning on a protected subsurface network. This is Commander Vex of the Vlach Ascendancy. The voice was smooth, almost pleasant, but utterly devoid of warmth. Your defensive capabilities have been neutralized. Your communication networks have been restricted. We require immediate, unconditional surrender and resource tribute. Resistance will result in escalating consequences. You have one planetary rotation to comply. The message repeated, then cut to static. Ilera leaned against a stone pillar, her worst fears confirmed. The Vlach had returned to this sector. Everything she had translated from the ancient text was coming true, except the part about the Terran protectors coming to Viridia's aid. Historian Ilera. She spun around, ready to flee, only to find herself face to face with a tall, uniformed Kylosian male. Security Officer Kale, if she remembered correctly. Security Director Lozen sent me. He said, his expression unreadable. I'm to escort you to the Council. The Council? Ilera couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Now, they want to hear what I have to say. After these Vlach ships have surrounded our planet. Kale's mouth tightened. The Council is an emergency session. They've requested all experts on historical conflicts. That apparently includes you. I need to get to the Central Stone first, Ilera insisted. There's something there, a protocol, a signal device. It could be our only hope. My orders are to bring you to the Council immediately. And what good is the Council now? They've left us defenseless. Ilera clutched her satchel tighter. Officer Kale, look at what's happening. These invaders disabled our entire defense grid without firing a single destructive shot. What do you think happens when they actually start shooting? Kale glanced upward, as if he could see through the layers of stone to the alien ships orbiting above. His rigid posture slackened slightly. You really believe these stone structures could help? I know they can, but I need to access the control chamber beneath the central stone. He studied her face for a long moment. The council would call this treason. If I'm wrong, they can execute me after the Vlach are finished with us. Another moment of hesitation. Then Kale nodded sharply. I'll take you there, but I'm staying with you. To observe. Fine, Ilera agreed, already moving toward the exit. But we need to hurry. The Vlach aren't known for their patience. Above ground, Calstia had transformed. Citizens rushed through the streets, some heading home, others toward government buildings, seeking information or protection. The elegant spires of the Kylosian architecture, designed for beauty and harmony, now seemed fragile under the shadow of the warships visible in the sky. Kale led them through less traveled routes, avoiding the main thoroughfares. His hand never strayed far from his pulse pistol, though Ilera doubted it would offer much protection if the Vlach decided to land troops. How did you know? Kale asked as they navigated a narrow alley. About these Vlach. The council seemed completely surprised. The archives contain records from before our settlement here, Ilera explained, keeping pace despite her shorter stride. Fragments, mostly, but enough to piece together that the Vlach dominated this sector 2 millennia ago. They're resource harvesters. They strip planets of valuable minerals, enslave local populations for labor, then move on. And these Terran protectors you mentioned? Ilera hesitated. Less clear. The records suggest an alliance or even a single powerful species that drove the Vlach back. The texts call them Terrans and refer to them as guardians or protectors of certain worlds, including Viridia Prime. That's my theory. The stones appear to be connected to them somehow. A beacon system, perhaps, or a defense network. But the activation sequences are complex, and the Council never approved the energy expenditure necessary for my testing. They reached the central plaza, now eerily empty except for security forces establishing a perimeter. The massive central stone loomed ahead, its dark surface occasionally shifting with subtle patterns of energy. How do we get in? Kale asked, eyeing the security officers nervously. There's a maintenance access point on the western face, used by the archaeological teams. Kale nodded. Follow my lead. He approached the nearest security detail with confident strides. Officer Kale, Special Security Division. I have orders to secure the stone artifacts against potential targeting by the orbital vessels. The senior guard frowned. I don't have any record of such orders. Communications are compromised, Kale replied smoothly. Direct authorization from Director Lozen. You can verify once systems are restored. After a moment of hesitation, the guard stepped aside. Be quick about it. We're establishing a defensive perimeter here. Ilera kept her head down as they passed, hardly believing Kale's deception had worked. Once they reached the western face of the stone, she quickly located the concealed access panel and entered her research authorization code. A section of the stone's base slid silently aside, revealing a narrow stairway descending into darkness. The control chamber is 3 levels down, she whispered as they entered. The door sealed behind them, leaving them in near darkness until soft, ambient lighting activated along the walls. The passageway was ancient, far older than any Kylosian construction, with smooth, flowing architecture that seemed almost organic. This isn't Kylosian design, Kale observed, running his hand along a curved wall. No, the stones and these underground chambers predate our arrival by thousands of years. We built our cities around them, incorporated them into our architecture, but we never truly understood them. As they descended, the ambient energy grew stronger. By the time they reached the control chamber, the air itself seemed charged with potential. The large circular room was dominated by a central pedestal surrounded by curved, console-like structures. Ancient symbols covered the walls, flowing in patterns that occasionally shifted before their eyes. What is this place? Kale breathed, his earlier skepticism forgotten in the face of such obvious advanced technology. The heart of the stone network, Elara replied, moving immediately to one of the consoles. She removed data crystals from her satchel and began inserting them into receptor slots. My translations suggest this chamber can activate something called the Emergency Beacon Protocol to summon these Terrans, if they still exist, if they're still monitoring this sector. Kale's communication device suddenly crackled. All security personnel, be advised. Black landing craft detected. Multiple touchdown points confirmed in sectors 7, 12, and 15. All civilians to shelter immediately. This is not a drill. Their eyes met in the glowing light of the ancient consoles. They're starting their ground invasion, Kale said grimly. Sooner than expected, which means we don't have much time. Elara turned back to the console, her fingers flying over the strange interfaces. According to my translations, the beacon activation requires a specific energy sequence. It's tied to Viridia's unique geothermal activity. There's a thermal vent nearby that could provide the necessary power, but it needs to be channeled through these conduits in a precise pattern. And you know this pattern? Theoretically, Elara pointed to symbols appearing on one of the displays. These indicate an upcoming planetary alignment that creates a resonance field. It happens once every 42 days. And according to my calculations, she checked her timepiece. It's happening in less than an hour. Kale's expression hardened. Tell me what you need me to do. I need to prepare the conduit system. You'll need to activate the thermal tap when I give a signal. She hesitated. It's dangerous. If the energy flow isn't properly regulated, we'll be vaporized. Kale finished for her. Still better odds than surrendering to the Vlak. For the first time, Elara allowed herself a small smile. I thought you were sent to stop me. I was sent to observe you, he corrected. And what I'm observing is our best chance at survival. Above them, the sounds of distant energy weapons echoed through the city. Commander Vex of the Vlak Ascendancy stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable harvest, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he observed the Kylosian capital through the ship's enhanced visual feed. His smooth, reptilian features betrayed no emotion, but satisfaction radiated from his posture. Resistance? He inquired. Minimal, Commander, his first officer replied. Their security forces are attempting to establish defensive positions around government buildings, but our ground troops are encountering no significant challenges. Their council, still deliberating according to our intelligence. They appear divided on whether to surrender or attempt negotiation. Vex made a dismissive gesture with his clawed hand. There is nothing to negotiate. The terms were clear. He turned to his tactical officer. Prepare a precision strike on an uninhabited area near their capital. Something dramatic enough to eliminate any remaining resistance without damaging potential resources. Sir, the tactical officer hesitated. We're detecting unusual energy readings from one of the stone structures in the city center. Vex's inner eyelids flickered with interest. What kind of energy? Unknown, sir, but the pattern is escalating rapidly. Moving to the tactical station, Vex studied the readings himself. Something about the energy signature triggered a distant memory, a warning perhaps from his academy days. Something about this sector's history. Deploy a suppression team to that location immediately, he ordered. Whatever the Kylosians are attempting, I want it stopped. Deep beneath the central stone, Elara worked feverishly, connecting ancient systems while Kale monitored the thermal vent controls. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her fingers trembling slightly as she input the final activation sequence. The planetary alignment will reach optimum position in 4 minutes, she called out. The geothermal activity is already responding to the gravitational shifts. Kale nodded, his attention fixed on the pulsing energy readouts. The thermal tap is primed. Ready when you are. From above came the sudden sound of weapons fire, much closer than before. Vlak ground forces, Kale said grimly. They must have detected our energy signatures. We need more time. Alara's mind raced. Can you hold them off? Without hesitation, Kale drew his pulse pistol. I'll buy you what I can. Just make sure this works. He moved to the entrance of the control chamber, taking position behind a curved section of wall that offered some cover. Alara turned back to the consoles, forcing herself to focus despite the sounds of approaching conflict. The ancient symbols flowed across the displays, aligning into patterns she'd spent years trying to understand. Now, finally, they made sense, a cosmic lock waiting for the right key. 2 minutes to alignment, she called out, adjusting the final parameters. When I give a signal, activate the thermal tap at full capacity. The first pulse blast struck the doorway, sending fragments of ancient material scattering across the floor. Kale returned fire, his pistol woefully outmatched against Vlach weaponry, but effective enough to slow their advance. "Whatever you're doing, historian, do it faster," he shouted between bursts. The symbols on the console pulsed in unison as the planetary alignment reached its critical point. Alara felt the stone itself vibrating beneath her feet, resonating with energies dormant for millennia. "Now, Kale, activate the tap." Kale slammed his hand onto the activation panel while continuing to fire with his other hand. Immediately, raw geothermal energy surged through the ancient conduits. The entire chamber shuddered as power levels spiked beyond anything the Kylosians had ever harnessed. The console before Alara erupted in light, symbols racing across its surface at impossible speeds. The floor beneath them trembled more violently, and for a terrible moment she feared the chamber would collapse. Then a new pattern formed on the central pedestal, a three-dimensional projection of stars and worlds, with a pulsing light at its center. A single symbol appeared above it, one Alara recognized from her translations. "Beacon. It's working," she cried as the light intensified. A Vlach soldier appeared in the doorway, insectoid helmet gleaming in the chamber's light. Kale fired, striking the soldier's shoulder, but the advanced armor absorbed most of the impact. The Vlach raised its own weapon. The energy surge reached critical mass. A blinding column of light erupted from the central pedestal, shooting upward through the stone above. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet, Kylosian and Vlach alike. When Alara's vision cleared, she saw the control chamber in partial collapse, debris blocking the entrance where the Vlach soldiers had been. Kale was struggling to his feet nearby, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but otherwise intact. "Did it work?" he asked, voice rough with dust. Before Alara could answer, the entire stone structure above them resonated with power. Through the broken ceiling, they could see the central stone pulsing with brilliant energy that shot skyward in a beam that pierced the atmosphere. A signal so powerful it would traverse vast distances of space almost instantaneously. The emergency beacon had been activated. "Now we wait," Alara whispered, helping Kale to his feet, "and hope someone is listening." Commander Vex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The energy beam from a stone structure had bypassed all their sensors, all their defenses, punching through subspace in a way that Vlach science barely understood. "What is it?" he demanded of his science officer. "Unknown, Commander. But the energy signature contains information, a signal of some kind." "To whom?" The science officer hesitated. "We cannot determine the recipient. The signal uses no known communication protocol." Vex's instincts, honed through decades of conquest, screamed danger. "Accelerate our timetable. Begin resource extraction immediately. I want this planet secured within 6 hours." "Sir," his first officer ventured, "the Council still hasn't formally surrendered." "Then make an example." Vex's voice was cold. "Target their government complex. No survivors." For 3 days, Alara and Kale survived in the underground network beneath the stones, moving through ancient passages to avoid Vlach patrols. Above them, Calstia burned. The government complex had been reduced to rubble, most of the council killed in the initial strike. Kylosian resistance was scattered, disorganized, and rapidly failing. They weren't alone in the underground refuge. Other survivors had found their way to the ancient passages, civilians, security personnel, even a few council members who had escaped the attack. A small pocket of resistance formed, though all knew it was merely a matter of time before the Vlach located them. "The beacon has been active for 3 days," a former council aide said, despair evident in her voice. If anyone was going to respond, wouldn't they have done so by now? The survivors had gathered in a large chamber that might once have been some kind of meeting hall. Dozens of tired, frightened Kylosians looked to Alara for answers she wasn't sure she had. The translations weren't specific about response time, she admitted. The Terrans, if they still exist, could be far from our sector, or they never existed at all, muttered someone in the back. Kale, who had become the de facto security leader of their group, stepped forward. What we know is that the Vlach are methodically stripping our planet of resources. They've established extraction facilities in every major resource deposit. They're not just conquering, they're harvesting. Which means we're running out of time, Alara finished. They'll have no reason to leave any of us alive once they've taken what they want. A young security officer rushed into the chamber. Black dropships, at least a dozen, heading toward the central city. They're converging on the stone network. They must have traced the beacon's energy signature, Kale realized. They're going to destroy the stones. Alara felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. If the stones were destroyed, any hope of outside help, already fading, will be gone entirely. We need to split up, Kale decided. Make it harder for them to find all of us. As the survivors began organizing into smaller groups, a deep rumble shook the ancient walls. At first, Alara thought it was Vlach bombardment, but the vibration was different, more regular, almost like a pulse. The stones, she whispered, rushing to a monitoring console that still functioned. They're activating. Around them, the ancient structure hummed with renewed energy. The symbols on the walls began to glow, flowing in patterns Alara had never seen before. Is it the Black? Kale asked, weapon ready. No, this is coming from within the network itself. It's responding to something. On the surface, Commander Vex stood before the central stone, now surrounded by Vlach forces and heavy equipment prepared to dismantle the structure. The mysterious energy beam had finally faded, but Vex remained uneasy. Something about this place, these structures, triggered ancestral warnings in his Vlach DNA. Begin the demolition, he ordered. I want these structures reduced to... He never finished the sentence. Above them, the sky tore open. There was no other way to describe it. Reality itself seemed to stretch and then split, creating a massive aperture in the upper atmosphere. Through this wound in space emerged a vessel of such immense proportions that it dwarfed even the Vlach flagship. Unlike the sleek, predatory lines of the Vlach ships, this new arrival was brutally functional, a massive block of dark metal bristling with what were unmistakably weapon systems. Its hull bore scars of past conflicts, not hidden but displayed proudly like battle trophies. Insignia marked its flanks in an unfamiliar script with one dominant symbol, a stylized planet with a protective shield. In the command center of his flagship, Vex stared at the tactical display in shock. Identification, he barked. Unknown configuration, his tactical officer replied, voice trembling slightly. But, sir, it's massive. At least 4 times our flagship's mass. Energy readings are unprecedented. Hail them, Vex ordered, his earlier confidence shaken but not broken. All languages, all frequencies. Before his communications officer could comply, every screen on the bridge flickered and changed. A new face appeared, unmistakably alien, with flat features, rounded ears, and hairless except for the top of its head and above its eyes. Female, perhaps by the voice that spoke next. Vlach vessels. This is Commander Eva Rostova of the Human Federal Defense Force Warship Oathkeeper. You have violated territorial space protected under the ancient Protectorate Protocol. Your presence has triggered an emergency beacon to which we are bound by treaty to respond. Vex found his voice. This system is unclaimed. The natives have no interstellar treaties or alliances. The alien, this human, actually smiled, a gesture that displayed blunt teeth in what Vex somehow knew was not a friendly expression. The Kylosians may not remember the treaty, Commander Rostova replied. But we do. The Terran Protectorate has maintained the beacon network for 2,000 years, Commander. We are very patient and very thorough. Vex drew himself up. The Vlach Ascendancy does not recognize your claim to this system. We have superior numbers. We suggest you withdraw. The human's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. You misunderstand, Commander Vex. This is not a negotiation. You have exactly 1 standard hour to recall all ground forces, cease all resource extraction, and withdraw from this system. Failure to comply will result in immediate neutralization of your fleet. The transmission cut, returning the bridge to stunned silence. Vex turned to his tactical officer. Analysis of their weapons capabilities. Difficult to determine, sir. Their systems are unlike anything in our database. But the energy signatures suggest immense power. They are one ship. We are a fleet. Vex's voice regained its edge. Prepare all vessels for combat. Target their propulsion systems first. In the underground chamber, Ilera and the other survivors watched in awe as the stone network projected images of what was happening above. The massive human ship hung in orbit, a dark sentinel against the stars. The Terrans, Ilera breathed. They're real. They came. Kale stared at the projected image, his expression a mixture of hope and trepidation. They're not what I expected. What happens now? One of the council survivors asked. Before anyone could answer, the chamber filled with a new voice, the same voice they had heard addressing the Vlach commander. People of Iridia Prime, I am Commander Eva Rostova of the Human Federal Defense Force. The emergency beacon has been acknowledged. Your planet is under the protection of the Terran Protectorate by ancient treaty. The threat will be neutralized. Please remain in shelter. The message repeated once, then silence fell. What does she mean by neutralized? Someone asked nervously. They would soon find out. Above, the Vlach fleet moved into attack formation. 20 warships against the single human vessel. Commander Vex stood confident on his bridge as his ships deployed, surrounding the intruder. All vessels, target locks confirmed, his tactical officer reported. Awaiting your command. Vex allowed himself a satisfied smile. Fire. Multiple beams of destructive energy lanced out from the Vlach ships, converging on the human vessel. For a brief moment, the massive ship disappeared in a blaze of light. When the energy dissipated, the Oathkeeper remained unchanged. No damage. Not even its defensive shields had been visibly taxed. Impossible, Vex whispered. The human ship's response was swift and terrifying, not in destruction, but in precision. Targeted energy pulses struck each Vlach vessel simultaneously, not at their weapons or vital systems, but at specific points along their hulls. One by one, the Vlach ships went dark, their systems entirely neutralized. Vex watched in horror as his own flagship's controls shut down around him. Emergency lighting activated as primary systems failed. Artificial gravity fluctuated. Even their life support systems operated at minimum capacity. On every screen that still functioned appeared the human commander's face. Your fleet has been neutralized using non-destructive measures, Commander Rostova stated calmly. Your life support will continue functioning for 72 hours. That should give you ample time to evaluate your situation. Your ground forces have been similarly contained. We offer one opportunity for survival. Unconditional withdrawal from this system, with a binding agreement never to return. Vex, for the first time in his career, faced total defeat. And if we refuse, there won't be enough left of your fleet to return home with news of your failure. The human's voice remained calm, almost conversational. The choice is yours, Commander. We await your decision. The transmission ended, leaving Vex and his crew in the dim emergency lighting of a dead ship. One by one, the Vlach landing craft lifted off from Viridia's surface, carrying defeated invasion forces back to their neutralized fleet. Under the watchful sensors of the Oathkeeper, the Vlach vessels limped away from the system, their once proud commander having signed a formal agreement never to violate Viridian space again. In Calstia's central plaza, Ilera stood with Kale and the surviving Kylosians, watching as a shuttle descended from the human warship. Unlike the aggressive designs of the Vlach craft, the human shuttle was functional but not intimidating, clearly designed for diplomatic rather than military purposes. What do we say to them? asked a surviving council member nervously. How do we thank someone for saving our entire world? Alara clutched the translated documents she had brought from the underground chamber. We honor the ancient treaty. We acknowledge the protectorate. The shuttle settled gently onto the plaza. Its doors opened to reveal Commander Eva Rostova and a small delegation of human officers. They were strange to Kylosian eyes. Their two-legged gait, their varied colorings, their flat features. Yet there was something reassuringly solid about them, a presence that radiated both strength and restraint. Commander Rostova approached, stopping a respectful distance from the Kylosian delegation. Up close, she was tall by Kylosian standards, with dark hair pulled back severely from her face and a uniform that emphasized function over aesthetics. I am Commander Eva Rostova of the Human Federal Defense Force, she began, her voice clear in the still air of the plaza. On behalf of the Terran Protectorate, I acknowledge the activation of the emergency beacon and formally extend our protection to Viridia Prime, as established by Treaty 2,000 years ago. Alara stepped forward, her heart pounding. Commander, I am historian Alara. I activated the beacon based on ancient records. We had no knowledge of this treaty until recently. Rostova nodded, unsurprised. Many protected worlds forget. It's been 20 generations since the Vlach last ventured into this sector. But the beacons remain, and we monitor them always. Why? Kale asked, unable to contain himself. Why protect worlds that don't even remember you? For the first time, Rostova's formal demeanor softened slightly. Because 2 millennia ago, humanity was where you are now, vulnerable, isolated, facing extinction at the hands of species like the Vlach. We were saved by intervention, and we swore never to forget that debt. The Protectorate began as gratitude and became duty. She gestured to the Whispering Stones. These beacons were established as a warning system. When activated, they send a specific signal that only human ships can detect. A signal that carries the coordinates of the world in danger. And you came, Alara said softly. Across whatever distance. We came, Rostova agreed. As we always will. She straightened, returning to her formal bearing. The Vlach have been warned. They won't return to this system. But other threats may emerge in time. The beacon remains active, and we will respond if needed. The surviving council member stepped forward hesitantly. Commander, we owe you a debt we cannot repay. How can we possibly thank you? Rostova surveyed the damaged city around them, her expression thoughtful. We'll provide immediate humanitarian aid and technical assistance for rebuilding. Beyond that, she turned back to the Kylosians. Remember your history. Study these stones. They contain more than just the beacon. They hold knowledge your ancestors deemed important enough to preserve for millennia. Will you stay? Alara couldn't help asking. Rostova shook her head. The Oathkeeper will remain in orbit for several weeks, while we assist with immediate recovery efforts. After that, a smaller diplomatic vessel will be assigned to Viridia Prime to establish formal relations and cultural exchange. But our presence here will be minimal. The Protectorate does not colonize or govern. We only defend. Kale stepped forward, his security officer's assessment evident in his gaze. Commander, what do you expect in return for this protection? If Rostova was offended by the direct question, she didn't show it. Nothing that constrains your development or independence. The treaty requires only that you maintain the beacon network and notify us of any significant threats to your system. In time, as your technology advances, we hope you'll join the wider community of protected worlds, perhaps even become protectors yourselves one day. As the human delegation moved to discuss practical matters of aid and recovery with the surviving council members, Alara found herself standing before the central stone once more. Its surface still pulsed with energy, but differently now, calmer, steadier, as if it had fulfilled its purpose and settled into a new phase of existence. Kale joined her, his expression thoughtful. Everything changes now, he said quietly. Our entire understanding of our place in the universe. Our future. For the better, Alara replied, though uncertainty colored her voice. They saved us. Yes. Kale watched the humans with a mixture of gratitude and caution. But they're so different from what I imagined. So powerful. Their ship neutralized an entire Vlach fleet without destroying a single vessel. What kind of civilization can do that? One that chooses restraint even when they have overwhelming force, Ilera observed. That says something important about them, doesn't it? Before Kale could respond, Commander Rostova approached them, having briefly excused herself from the discussions with the council members. Historian Ilera, she said, I understand from preliminary reports that you were instrumental in activating the beacon. The Protectorate owes you its gratitude. Ilera blinked in surprise. I merely followed the clues left in our archives. It was desperation, really. Desperation coupled with scholarship and courage, Rostova corrected. A powerful combination. She glanced at the stone behind them. These structures have watched over your world for thousands of years. They were built by a civilization even more ancient than the Protectorate, a race we call the Architects. They're gone now, but their technology endures. The Architects, Ilera breathed, a historian's excitement momentarily overpowering the exhaustion of the past days. Our legends speak of world shapers who came before us. Rostova nodded. Many protected worlds have similar legends. The truth, as usual, is more complex than the myths. But that's a conversation for another day. She turned to Kale. And you are? Security Officer Kale, he replied, straightening instinctively. I assisted historian Ilera. He saved my life, Ilera corrected, multiple times, and risked his own to help activate the beacon. Then the Protectorate owes you gratitude as well, officer. Rostova's formal demeanor softened slightly. Your world has been through a traumatic experience. Recovery will take time, but humans have some experience with rebuilding after devastation. We'll help where we can. As she spoke, more human shuttles descended from the Oathkeeper, bringing medical teams, engineers, and aid supplies. The efficiency of their operation was impressive. Within hours, temporary medical facilities were established, power systems restored to critical infrastructure, and damage assessments underway. Standing in the shadow of the central stone, watching humans and Kylosians working side by side, Ilera felt something she hadn't experienced since before the Vlach arrived. Hope. Do you think they'll really come back if we need them again? Kale asked quietly, voicing the doubt that lingered in many Kylosian minds. Ilera thought of Commander Rostova's words about duty and gratitude, about promises kept for 2,000 years. Yes, she said with newfound certainty. I believe they will. In orbit above Viridia Prime, the human warship Oathkeeper maintained its silent vigil, scarred, powerful, and resolute. Its very presence a promise that echoed across the stars. Brace yourself, those who would threaten the protected. A human warship is incoming, and it will not be deterred.